All right, so let's continue right where we left off. And at that point, we had a cover and a menu. So we're now going to work on our menu page, which chronologically here would occur after our cover. Of course, that's totally up to you. And I'd like to do something a little bit more tricky than just this image is going to allow us. I'd like to separate out the girl with the wings here from the background. So can't really do that in Xcode. So what we're going to do is just delete that out, or they'll replace out the texture for it. Either way works. But let's import in some new assets over here. And of course, on your end, since I'm using some stock images that I can't just give you guys, you're going to have to just go with whatever images are going to be more appropriate for your book. And here we go. We've got Wing Girl. Now this is a PNG file, so the blank part that you're seeing back here is actually transparent data. So I'm just going to drop that on in, and then I've separated out the gradient from that. So I'm going to, of course, also put that in there, and head back over this way. So I can probably just keep this image. I already labeled it with the name of Girl with Wings. It does have that custom class of element that's going to be essential for the property list, and what I call that, Wing Girl, I guess is what I named the image. Okay, so now that we've got that in there, I'm going to get this back down to the bottom of it, and then let's put that nice sky color back in as well, and I believe I called that gradient, so I do need to adjust the size just a little bit. There we go. And yet again, let's put this at a better Z position than 0, because we don't want that to ever accidentally get in front of our girl, otherwise we wouldn't see her. And just for the sake of not having this as a name, let's go ahead and put in there a gradient for that. Don't think I need to do anything with the property list with it though, but it is convenient to be able to name things. All right, so now that we've got that, I was thinking it'd be fun to attach some of our menu items to the girl with wings, and then what we'll do is make it so that we can kind of pan around when we touch down on the device, which will not only move the girl around, but it'll also move some of our menu items. Let's first have a little bit of fun with the panning, though, so we'll set that up, and then we'll start parenting things or making children of this one image. So go over here to our property list. Let's fold this up. Let's fold down elements. And of course, if you wanted to, you could just copy in one of your other elements that you previously have, and then just paste it on in. There we go. Of course, I need to change the name of it. Now it's Girl with Wings is that name. And let's go ahead and just get rid of the touch-up events. Really, copying and pasting didn't save me much time. It probably cost me more time than if I just made a new dictionary entry. But we'll worry about what we're going to put inside of here in just a moment. Let's include in the panning for right now. So since we want the panning to occur right away, or at least I do, all I have to do is unfold events, and these are any events that you want to just immediately happen when the page loads up. So what I'm going to do is hit the plus sign over there, just type in pan x, and this wants a string value, which just means it's any alphanumeric value, and in this case it's going to point to whatever node I want to pan. So I'm just going to copy the element name over here, so put that in, and as soon as you do that, it should pan the girl with wings on the x-axis, and of course there's a companion property for the y-axis, just pan y. But one little issue I have is, I believe, because I just tested this, I still have some animation inside of here, and of course you can see now she kind of gets raised up a bit too much, so let's just fix that. And also, since we've separated this out, or I have now, it might be a little bit cooler to start her out quite a bit lower on the screen, which wasn't really an option before with the previous cover image, because then you were kind of seeing to the background back there. So this time let's bump her up maybe about 600, and we'll see where that takes her to. Okay, not enough. So let's go maybe 900. And, a little too far. All right, so I'm thinking 825 will do the trick. And then what we'll do is let's go ahead and test this out. I should show this to you in the simulator, I guess. Okay, so I got it fired up. Pause the video for a moment there so don't waste too much of your time. I'm going to click down on the image and you can see, sure enough, she shows up over here. And then as I press down, she just pans across. Cool, right? And kind of the difference between a panning gesture and some of the other ways you could make things move is wherever you pan from. So basically, I don't have to be touching her, so I can pan from over here, and it's going to move her offset from the current location that she's at. Whereas there are ways to touch down and move things, but with those ones, it's kind of more of a the image is following the touch event. So let's say if I press down over here, what might happen is the image jumps to this point that I'm touching down to, and then I'm basically moving it around. That would be more appropriate for something like a puzzle piece where you're going to feel like you're actually grabbing it and moving it. But for something like this, pan is perfect. So now let's attach some menu items to the girl. So let me just fold these down. And labels are pretty darn basic. You can't do that much with them. And actually, let me copy in one of my ones from before. But what we can do is basically create dummy buttons that are color sprites that are going to act as the actual button, but it's going to appear like you're touching down on the label. And if you work with the kit, just get used to doing that. So here we go. Let's make the size of this just a tad smaller. Maybe go down to... Okay, there we go. So one of the pages we'll make is, how about, so I've got an image that I can use for a planet core. All right. And Sprite Kit is really kind of simplistic with their text features. You can't actually do a line break. So if you try to press into here to do another line, you're kind of stuck like that. It's just going to do that. But it doesn't mean that you can't, of course, copy and paste out another line like we had in the intro page. And I actually think I kind of want to do that. So there we go. So now the kind of the button area is going to encompass a little less. And while we got these guys, let's go ahead and have a little trouble selecting them. There we go. Let's move them on down. I might just have to do it one at a time. Well, there you go. You can see how to rotate it if you accidentally hit that little blue thing. And yet again, this will be a case for just kind of shifting them via their numerical values. I'm not going to wrestle with it much longer. And then let's make their parents be a girl with wings. And you'll notice that as soon as you do that, there's a little line over there pointing to the actual parent. Let's do the same thing for the other label. And then you'll notice too, if I hit the animate button, they are attached to the girl. Not exactly sure why those floated down the way they just did. That's an interesting one. Let's. And I know exactly why now. It's because I ended up copying the text from the page which retained its the animations that were in there. So let's go ahead and just get rid of that and that. There we go. All right. So now when it animates up, it's not going to move anywhere. And before we make that button around this, let's have a little fun with the text and show you, I think, something that's important to bring up early on in the property list. So we've got our pan X property in here for the events. Now, what if you also wanted to pan that text? And we could certainly do that. We just have to remember the names of it. Line and actually, because we duplicated them, they both have the same name, which is actually okay in the kit. If we wanted to affect the same thing to two things, we could do that. We might want to, I don't know, maybe we want to rename it for whatever reason. So I will just go ahead and put in here line 1 and line 2, and that'll give us more to do in the property list anyway. So we've got pan X already in here. Now you're thinking, all right, well, I'm going to do this again. So I paste it in, and you'll notice that you can't have the same named property twice inside of a dictionary, and you're going to get something that says it's already present in the dictionary, and you're going to bang your head against the wall trying to force that in there. And of course, the code is looking for very specific property names, so you can't just go and say pan X2 and expect it to do anything, right? But pretty much any property that has a string value over here can also be set to an array if it sort of makes sense for it to be able to do more, that basically have more than one property in there, and which most events that take in values like this can. So for example, I've changed this to array now, and then what I want to do is unfold that and list out all the items that I want to pan. So again, it's going to be girl with wings, and now you'll see that I can just hit the plus sign again, and we've got line 1, we can do line 2, and if we run this yet again on the simulator, you'll see that now not only is the girl panning, but also the text, but in a kind of a unique way in that it's kind of getting doubly panned, because keep in mind the girl's moving it around, right? But then it's also moving on its own inside of here. Get it? Otherwise we didn't need to do that if we just wanted to see it kind of pan with the normal, at the normal speed that the girl's moving. But you could also have a little fun by keeping the girl kind of locked in on the x-axis, but changing or copying and pasting this down so you got pan Y, delete out the girl, and then run it again. And of course, as you'd expect, when we move up and down, of course we'll have to jump over to the next page. That's going to get older after a while. So I'm moving kind of, it looks a little bit more freeform, right? So scooting around here, but it stays locked to the girl, but you can kind of do some interesting things like that. And who knows what will happen if they kind of drag out this way. But might have to have one static button that reloads the page in case people totally lose track of their menu items. But we're just getting a little experimental here is all. All right, so let's attach the a kind of dummy button to that. And let's head back over here to our menu. And there we go, pan it out a little bit. All right, so just go find a sprite. We're going to make this just about the size that we want the button to be. Let's give it a name that makes sense, like Planet Core Button, something that will remind us what page that actually goes to. As usual, if it's a sprite and we want to interact with it, we're going to set that to be a custom class of element. And there's a couple ways you could go about kind of hiding this. You could just set the opacity all the way down. That works pretty well. Another option would be to send its Z position to the very back behind our gradient that we've stretched out over here. I'd say the only issue with that is it makes it a little difficult to select it later on. So if you're trying to find it, you're really going to have to go this way. Whereas now that it's just invisible, I could put this up at a Z position of, let's say, 50, and then that way anytime I kind of press down here, I know that I'm selecting this. Of course, that makes it a little bit difficult to select your text, but hey, that such is life with pretty much any development program. What is higher on the Z layering is going to get selected first. Okay, so yet again, this is another thing that we want to have moved around with our pan properties. So I'll do another plus sign inside of here. Do the same thing for our X. Otherwise, the button's going to get wildly shifted off from the lines of text that kind of indicate that that's the thing to press. And another thing we want to do is make sure that we don't forget to parent this to what? Girl with wings. All right. So, and of course you can test that. Just hit the animate button, make sure that floats on up there with it. And then back over here to the property list, we do want to put in here our element, which is going to be Planet Core Button. Be sure you get your spelling correct, or your cases, I should say. And again, I'm always a big fan of just copying what we had before. That worked. So go over here, let's grab touch up event, paste that on into our Planet Core button, and then let's open up a page called, well, most likely we'd want it to be Planet Core, but just for testing real fast, let's just make it go back to the cover page again. Okay, so let's fire this up. And by the way, if you don't see this example working on your project, you might not have the most recent version of the kit, because I did just recently make a change so that buttons or location detection inside of other children works a bit more smoothly than it ever did before. So things like what we were doing over here do work. All right, so let's move this around. Let's kind of get it over to here, and let's try clicking on it. And what we should see, or I should say tapping, is it goes back to the cover page again. That is terrific. Of course, eventually we'll want it to go to the Planet Core page. And let's do one other thing. Obviously, with this kind of panning that we have set up here, the kid can just completely wander off. And if we are making a children's book, they're going to do something silly like that, like keep pressing over into here until they can see basically nothing. There's a great way to limit that, though. Go over here to your girl with wings element. Add a new property inside of here. This is going to be max x is going to be the property name, and then a nice little companion of min x, which will be the minimum value that the girl can go to on the x-axis, and the max, of course, will be the max limit. So let's just put in there 19 by 20. Of course, this depends a little bit on the device that you're using, but this should work well for both of them. Of course, we'll be testing on the iPad, and I threw in 1920 because that's that's the scene width of an iPhone. So we'll see if it works for both devices. I think it should. And there is actually a way to define properties independent of or for a particular device. And sure enough, that looks about right to me. It looks like she gets a little... I was thinking she'd maybe go a little bit further this way, but this is actually probably pretty good. So there you go. Now, as you scroll around, you can't kind of lose track of the girl. I'm trying my best to move her off even further, but once they hit their max, that is it. And, in theory, I guess we could do the same thing for our menu buttons, because it looks like what I did was I kind of, by continually pushing over there, I was still affecting the children inside of it. But yeah, I think that works pretty good. And you could always just make it so that if they click anywhere down on the page, it kind of resets itself, or it just begins the book from someplace other than one of the menu options. So there's all sorts of workarounds to that. But anyway, we got our menu working for now. And of course, as we create more pages, what we'll end up doing is adding more menu items. But this gives us an opportunity to move on to the Planet Core page. And by the way, if you wanted to take a look at that code that I updated so that you can click images inside that are parented inside of other nodes, that, again, was a recent change, and you could find it in your, I'm going to show it to you guys, your page gestures and touches.swift file, and it's highlighted over here. So if you did want to just do a quickie update to your version of Kit, or make sure that you have the version that works with, it's these lines inside of here around, here's the beginning of the function. So if you did want to take a look at that, and of course, though, don't worry, you never have to do coding with this kit. You get to rely on me to do all that fun stuff for you. All right, so let's move on to a new video shortly.